all about the Sphinx.
Souls? Pool of souls?
Yes.
Do you understand what I'm trying to get at? Like, is there a limited amount of souls?
Yes. What happened was something either arrived on the back of somebody's ship, or it came in when people were exiting from Mars, or it came in through an asteroid. No one really knows exactly where it came in. But whenever this thing came in, it brought the fear virus. So essentially, it was something that wasn't planned for this experiment. This experiment was supposed to be like a totally different type of experiment without the fear virus. But what happens when you have a planet with souls is it just kind of changes the experiment, so to speak. There's more polarity. And basically on every planet they have a law, but this planet does have the law of duality, so you have to have good and bad or whatever. You have to abide by those laws when you come to this planet. But the problem is it attracts this kind of like vibration. So it attracts beings that feed off of fear. And that was the base of the Sphinx until symbolically it was taken down with like the whole pool of souls. You split yourself into these little fragments. It's in the water. All you have to do is go in the water and you can pick up on the Atlantean energy there.
Hey, Fire Tribe. How are you, beautiful humans? Today is a special episode, of course. We have Sarah Breskman Cosme. It is her second time on the show. If you guys remember the first episode, there was a lot of audio that got cut out in the middle because it was such a good interview that a lot of the audio got lost. Specifically, my audio right in the middle. It's quite funny. Anywho, we are back again with her new book, Secret of the Sphinx, and joining us we have Juan Ayala from the One-on-One podcast as a co-host, because that's like what we like to do sometimes. Anywho, this is a great deep dive into some of the other alternative theories on the Sphinx. These past couple months we've talked a lot about pyramids, but there's always in the alluring Giza Plateau the secret of the Sphinx, and there are many books written on the topic, and there are many theories as to the faces change, the meaning, the bunkers underneath, so on and so forth. I'm sure you are well equipped on all of your Sphinx gnosis. But today we're getting straight information from the astral realm, the ethereal realm, from a licensed hypnotist. And if you haven't checked out Sarah Breskman Cosme's work, please do that. There will be a link down below in the show notes. Her books are awesome. They are available on Audible. Well, her first book's available on Audible. The second one she's just about finished with, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Fantastic stories of her patients, and when they go into the trance state, they are able to bring up some of their past lives, and a lot of them have reoccurring themes, them being in ancient Atlantean times and ancient Egypt for this one specifically, and so it's really cool. Her work is awesome, and I hope to talk to more hypnotists in the future. I've reached out to one. He never got back to me. But, you know, if you guys have any fun leads on any hypnotist that you know, be sure to email us that. Speaking of emailing, email us whatever you want. It's in the show notes here, so grab it, click it, write things, write what you're inspired by, if there's anything that stuck out to you, if there's any theme you want us to go in on for a month or two. any ideas. We're absolutely open. We want to hear from you, of course. So go ahead and email us some fun stuff. Let's get to know each other a little bit more. It's fun. We're all here just floating through time and space. Little time and space babies floating in the soup. That's what we are and what we do. Of course, I would love it if you guys joined us on the Telegram. Telegram is an amazing social media. And I say amazing because I'm talking about comparatively to some of the other mainstream social medias like Facebook and Instagram. It's really cool. It's a really great and easy way for podcasters and the community to vibe out, meet up on the interwebs and share PDF books and videos, and we all get to be interested in the same things in the same space. And so it's really special and great. And there is a link for that also in the show notes. Also in the show notes, there is a link to our Patreon. If you guys want to support Dan and I on this crazy venture, go ahead and support us. It's $3 a month. We absolutely appreciate it a whole bunch. There's a lot of content there, and we are creating more all the time, and a bunch of great stuff to dive in on. And of course, if you do that, and I'll send you a personal shout out and say thank you, and maybe we will get to share some stories. And as a member of the community, if you guys want to talk on the air, all you got to do is write in and show interest in it, and we'll get some stories out. If you have any paranormal stories or UFO stories or any stories that you want to share that you feel like need to be out there, be sure just to email me and we'll make it happen. Your stories deserve to be heard, deserve to be told. Your research, your work, whatever it is, just don't be scared to send us a message. Anyways, that's just about it. I do want to tell you guys about visionswitch.space. Speaking of, the ethereal realm, I have a great friend, as does Dan now, and she's been on the show a couple times, Sabaya Sogard. She has her company called Vision Switch, where she offers her psychic readings, energy healings and clearings, as well as past life readings. And she's offering the Fire Tribe a great discount. If you go to visionswitch.space and reach out to her for some work, tell her that you're from the Fire Tribe, that part of the Rising from the Ashes community, then you will get a great discount on that. And that's always great. We love that. So she's offering that to you guys specifically. And she's been in the clairvoyant realm working for a few years now. And she's really good. I absolutely love her so much. And I hope that you guys will too. And if you do go and see her, make sure to let me know about that. And I'm curious if you're willing to share your experience. I'd love to talk about it. It's always fun to talk to people who have done the same things and had the same type of work before. And so that's pretty much it, everybody. We don't have an RFTA news segment for you today, but you will have one next week with Adam Stokes for sure. And we're going to dive into a new topic starting these next couple months. We're going to be focusing on paranormal, parapsychology, ufology, and we're going to weave in the earthen electrical system through ley lines, cymatics, dowsing, sacred sites, and see how they mingle together. See if we can create a master weave over these next couple months. And that's about it, everybody. No RFTA news today. We're just going to go straight into the interview. And I hope you guys enjoy. I'll see you on the other side.
Hello, Fire Tribe. Welcome to
Rising
From the Ashes. I'm Danny Unaki Dan. That is
and I'm
Juan
Juan from the Juan on podcast.
Yes, and Roman.
I was trying to imitate Romy, bro. I'm sorry.
No worries, all good. Roman is on his way. He's running a little bit behind. And we are joined today with Sarah Breskman Cosme. It's good to have you back because our last episode got destroyed by Zencaster. And we had to splice it together, and Roman made a cool little episode out of it with some music behind it, with some words and whatnot. But it was very sad for us because we thought it was such a great interview. So we're glad to have you back on the show again. And this time we're gonna be talking a little bit about your other book, Hypnotist Guide to the Secrets of the Sphinx. We might go into a little bit of Atlantis and Lemuria too, because it's Florida, because both of you are in Florida. I think this will be pretty interesting because we've been, there's this not new, but Juan and Roman and a few other people have been doing research on Florida. And there's like some evidence that maybe Florida is the Garden of Eden. And it's very interesting that your contactee, Jen, was contacting with Lemuria, and I was kind of wondering is she originally from Florida also?
She's originally from New York City.
Oh, okay.
But what was interesting is when she would go deep under hypnosis, her subconscious kept saying that through all her lives, she would end up on the East Coast. She couldn't move from the East Coast because it was one of the closest points to where she lived in Atlantis. So from most of my clients, described Atlantis as being in the Atlantic Ocean, and it was very large. I mean, but everything looked different back then. So when my clients would leave their body and they would look at the globe, it would look so different with like water and coastlines in different places. But Atlantis seemed to span from like Europe all the way to like North America. And then the Western Africa or Northern Africa was seen as like a lone sandbar that went from like where Egypt is to the Sphinx. So it looked totally like it looked different. But Atlantis was very large. But Lemuria was, I mean, most people described it as being in the South Pacific, also very large.
Oh, interesting. Because I thought she had a connection to Lemuria, though, not Atlantis.
She did, which was so interesting. So what's really interesting about it all is after we uncovered everything, she moved to Hawaii to be back to the closest place to where she felt Lemuria was. She moved to the Big Island of Hawaii because she felt the strongest resonance there. But she couldn't go. Her subconscious said she couldn't go until she uncovered this important information. And then after that was done, she moved her family over there, and she's really happy now, which is great for her.
Yeah. Hawaii has definitely a different vibe than everywhere else. You can feel it. You can feel it when you go there.
And they still have the remnants of a lot of things that she was describing in the book. I mean, when she was growing up in Lemuria, they used to walk around these labyrinths, and by walking around and meditating, it would change your vibration, so you'd be a different vibrational match to the answer that you were trying to get, or to your question. And they still have, on top of these mountainsides, they have these labyrinths. It's so interesting. And then in Lemuria, when people would describe going into these like special rooms where they would meditate, they had the flower of life symbol everywhere. And now when I went to Hawaii to see, and they still have that symbol, and they still know, it's almost like they know it's has a lot of energy from Lemuria there.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. You know what that is? You know what I found out the flower of life symbol is from my clients is that it's a key. It's coded. So when you stare at that symbol, it automatically downloads all this information and it unlocks transmission to your like star family, basically.
It's a
You can ask
mandala.
a question. You
Mhm.
can ask a question and just stare at it a little bit, and it's coded to be a key. And when it downloads information, not like a little information, it's like a lot. You might not consciously know it though.
Mm.
I did an episode on the 12 vial vortices around the world, and it was this theory brought up by a guy named I believe Ivan Sanderson, and these are places around the world where the veil is thinner. And you brought up Hawaii, and I believe one of the ones is by Hawaii. I'm trying to see where on the ley lines Hawaii sits, but I think there are many crossing ley lines at that one point. And the theory is there's 12 vial vortices, the Bermuda Triangle being the most famous one, but around these areas is where the the veil is thinnest. So there's more UFO sightings, there's paranormal activity, Skinwalker Ranch type of thing, where a lot of
Uh-huh.
crazy things happen. But in these 12 areas around the world, you've had Mohenjo-Daro, whole civilizations go missing because again, it's near these weird areas where the South Atlantic anomaly is where the belts around the Earth. I always forget the name. The Van Allen belts, I believe that's is the name of it. I always get it wrong. Where they're closest to the surface of the Earth, and there's been planes have gone missing. I believe the latest one was one of the Malaysia flights went missing around that area. And there's the show Manifest. I don't know if you guys have seen that, where they literally go through a wormhole. Spoiler alert: they go through like a wormhole and they come back 5 years later, but they hadn't, they didn't know what time had passed.
Mhm.
When they come back, they're like, it's 5 years later, their entire families have moved on. So it makes me think of these things because I do believe that the people in power, art is the subconscious bleeds through art, and it's almost like a revelation of method where they put it in these movies like fiction, but it's actually reality. It's what happens in real life. But they're not going to come out and be like, hey, this is real.
Right.
We can see into other dimensions. Let's make a show about it. It's called Stranger Things, and let's make a whole series about it. Let's make a bunch of money of people watching it. So
Right, definitely. And you're so right. It goes straight through the subconscious, art does, and it goes into the subconscious because I think the people in power know that if they can control the belief system of humans, then they can basically control reality because essentially each person is literally creating their own reality. And if you can find a way to control that, then you can do whatever you want.
and it's what Plato talked about in the Republic, where they were going to limit certain arts and certain musical notes and certain frequencies because he understood that it spoke to whatever the soul is, whatever. And the soul to him was also consciousness because they didn't have a word for it back then. So he called it the soul, the essence, whatever it is that makes us us, that
Mhm.
the divine spark, if you will. But they did understand that back then. And that's why they wanted to limit the arts that people could intake in this utopia, essentially this new Atlantis for him, right? And because they understood that if they would inspire people would be more prone to breaking out of the system, and how you're saying create their own realities, because it's all about perception. A lot of people don't understand that the way that you perceive things does make the biggest difference in the universe, essentially, and the observer effect is a real thing. So I do believe it's all about perception and the way that you look at things.
It's so true. And it's interesting because, like I said, if you can control, what people believe, you can control everything. But I think there's been so much suppression to the truth, which is that every human is super powerful. Did I freeze?
Mm-mm. You're good.
Lose you?
Oh, okay. No, every human is super super powerful. They're so powerful, but all that information has been suppressed. They don't want anyone to know just their capabilities. They don't want people to know that they could create their own reality or literally do anything they wanted to. And they can manifest, just through their own emotions or tapping into themselves. all that information has been hidden.
I guess one
We
froze.
Oh,
or got lost.
I didn't know if it was my internet.
That's okay. Roman just texted me too. He's going to be in a minute. Well, I have a lot of questions to ask you, Sarah, but I kind of wanted both of them to be here for those questions because I kind of wanted to get a little bit deeper with kind of your work and stuff and talk to you more about like the cognitive aspect of it or the consciousness aspect of it, of what do you think people are actually seeing when they go into these past life regressions? Do you think it's just something that's deep in their consciousness, or do you think it's like actually something that happened to them in a past life? What is time really anyway?
Such a great question. You know, when people go really deep into hypnosis and they're in that deep theta state, they connect to universal consciousness, basically. So you're just tapping into everything. You're tapping into the oneness. So basically, you can remember somebody else's life because essentially, when a human goes through the death process, as soon as they die, they can themselves a we. And you know what I find one of the most fascinating things is I can't tell you how many countless clients I've had that are regressed. They don't believe in extraterrestrials or whatever when they come in, and then they remember being an extraterrestrial. And I remember when the first person remembered being an extraterrestrial, I thought, that's weird that they remembered. Aren't they different? Aren't extraterrestrials different than us? And then slowly over the years, I realized, no, we are the extraterrestrials, basically. It's all like, according to my clients who don't know one another, that come in that have never, even thought of these things. They remember the same things, the same type of clothes. They might describe the planet exactly the same way, their missions the same way, and they don't have any previous knowledge about that. And these are their memories. So I really think, we're all so much more one than we really realize. And I've asked, these higher consciousness when, they come through, or like if an extraterrestrial is coming through, I ask, is there any difference between like my soul after I leave this life and your soul? And the answer is no. And then I was like, well, can I go from here, to like the Pleiades, say? And they said, no, because your soul doesn't have enough soul work to go from here to there. You would have to do enough soul work. And I was like, well, what does a human really have to do? Like, what's the purpose? What's the agenda? Like, what is everybody doing? And countless times, the higher consciousness will say, oh, it's just like every other, race that's working together. You're trying to figure out that you are God consciousness, essentially. You're trying to figure out that you are source. And it's your belief system that doesn't let you believe that. But once a whole group of you, actually understands that, completely understands it, then you will just move up into different frequencies and you keep ascending. But that's essentially what they've said other races do. Like I asked, what did Arcturians do? How did they get so advanced? And they were like, that's what they did as a collective over the millennia, to understand themselves as source. Now they don't need the lessons, but basically it seems like we're here to learn that. We come in forgetting that we're a part of it, and then we have this journey to remembering. Then we leave, then we try it all again. But you could just bypass that work and just understand you're God, basically.
Wow. Do you think these memories are retained in our DNA or in our blood, or how are we getting to our next life with these memories retained like deep in our subconsciousness?
Oh, they're definitely retained. When anybody goes under hypnosis and they connect with that, feel with that subconscious or higher consciousness, whatever you want to call it, they have access to everything. They have access to all the different things they've done, all the different, parallel lives they're doing, all the extraterrestrial versions of themselves, and really you realize you're so much greater, but experiences. And then when you pass, you have access to all of them.
So is it like our pineal gland is like a Wi-Fi connection to everything, and then we're just connecting into that more so than it's just being passed on through generation?
I think it's more than just your pineal gland. It's everything. It's your,
It's like a
essence.
culmination of.
But it's interesting that you said the pineal gland. I mean, I've had clients that remember being like a Sasquatch. And so they remember like having a really freed pineal gland, and they can focus on the air around them, and they can easily go in and out of different dimensions just through their focus and through their pineal gland. It's so interesting. Then they'll go in these different dimensions and come back for like berries or something.
Wow. So as a Sasquatch, do they feel like they're an alien, or do they feel like they're from this planet?
They have said they feel more native to this planet than like us humans, because we've been, we're more like I don't know, tampered, I guess, more genetically, mixed with so many multiple alien DNA and things like that. But yeah,
fascinating.
But we move in and out of dimensions all the time when we're sleeping, but we just don't realize it. And then a lot of the shamans have a perfectly freed pineal gland and understand how to do it themselves. So they can go in and out of dimensions into like the lower world and whatever you want to call it. It's really interesting, the stuff I find out.
That's great.
Hello. I just want to say I apologize for being late. And then it took me about 10 minutes to even get my sound working. But wonderful conversation so far, guys. And hello, Sarah.
Hi.
I'm hoping that today is foolproof, because last time was such an amazing conversation that we had some breakup there in the middle. But I'm actually curious if there was like a retrograde going on when we chatted last time, because like,
maybe.
That would be funny if there was like a retrograde cycle of communication.
It would make sense.
Juan was in here and he's been kicked off twice because of his connection. So there you go.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. So
strange interference.
Yeah, your audio is a little muffled too, Roman.
Sweet. Thanks. I'll work on it.
All right. Thank you. So also, Sarah, we're kind of talking a little bit about consciousness and about Lemuria and everything. One of the things that I talked to you about last time, and we completely lost all of the audio for it, but we've been bringing it up in conversations since then because it's been popping up over and over and over again. And that's this Atlantean red crystal.
Yeah. That's what my client kept seeing. So she saw these really special crystals. And Jen was somebody that didn't know anything about any of this stuff at all. Mm-hmm. It seemed like Atlantis in the very beginning had more red crystals, and they were taken away over time because they were so powerful. They were just, it was kind of scary for them to have it. But it was Lemuria that had working red crystals that created this immunity for them. And so Jen was in her time in Lemuria, very familiar with the red crystals. They would hold the history of, their history basically, and the history of other planets as well. They're really powerful crystals where they could communicate with their home planet through the red crystals, but they knew how to be a channel. And one of the reasons why these rulers of Lemuria especially were channels was because they had Rh negative blood, which was the royal bloodline, and it enabled them to be able to read these special crystals. The Rh negative blood was considered the gift of the stars, because it symbolized the union of one of the extraterrestrials that came down that was seeding the population, and this DNA worked. It survived. It created a bunch of new hybrid babies, and so they were considered the royal bloodline, negative blood.
It always makes so much sense because, you know, how the breeding works now with people with Rh negative blood and Rh positive, they can't interbreed unless they have a very specific type of drug that they take very early on in the process. But yeah, so, you know, there really is something to that. I'm curious when on the mainstream level we'll ever get to break that ice, to dig a bit deeper into those types of mysteries on a mainstream level, because surely enough on the alternative paradigms and the alternative medias, it gets talked about a lot and a lot of different stories tied into it, and it's all incredibly fascinating. But just on a scientific level, you know, in modern mainstream society, you can't interbreed with a Rh positive and Rh negative humans, and it's fascinating.
It is really fascinating. I mean, that just goes to show there's something, you know, different about this blood type. And the O blood type was what most of the Atlanteans had, according to my, which was interesting because they came originally from this other extraterrestrial that was seeding the planet. And so they were kind of more hybridized, so to speak.
Do these extraterrestrials have names? Or
well, they were Pleiadian.
Will we know them? Are they familiar in like the myths, or are they totally different?
No, you know, she didn't know anything about like the Anunnaki story or anything like that, like Inti and everything like that. And she didn't call them by any names. She didn't even know about extraterrestrials when we started doing this. And so she just remembered being a commander of a ship and totally describing it like her firsthand experience crash landing on Earth and what that was like. And it was so wild because this is somebody who didn't believe in any of this stuff. So I thought, oh my gosh. And then she just could describe it in so many details and how it felt to come to Earth, because on their planet, it was so far and they had to take classes before they came to Earth because they didn't have things like walking or eating. And so all these things seemed really strange about Earth, but they had to, you know, do these classes to figure out how to do this before coming to Earth for the first time. But then when they were on the Earth for the first time, it was really uncomfortable to feel things like hunger, like loneliness. It was so overwhelming, you know, and it was cold. It was difficult. Yeah, and emotions. Because a lot of people say they don't have their body when they're on a different planet, but they only have their body when they're interacting with humans. Or they're in the 3D plane. That's like when I was when I was learning more about the Sphinx being built. Yeah. They didn't have bodies, they had light bodies. And it looked like these angular white lights just shooting around, creating this structure, and then creating these massive tunnel systems underneath.
Oh, wow.
It was before anything, before the planet was seeded, even that structure was apparently created.
Wow.
Like massive 3D printer.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy. So I'm fresh on your stories of the Sphinx. I have yet to dig into your book, but I've done a lot of other research and very, very excited to talk about this. And it seems like you already brought it up a little bit, but what is the story of the creation of the Sphinx due to your research and encounters?
So I was working with the same subject because obviously she was so good. And what I liked the most about her was that she didn't have any conscious understanding of any of this stuff. I thought in that way it would help me validate this information and I didn't let her research any kind of past life regression or any kind of information at all until we were done. But when she was under hypnosis, we started uncovering the information about the Sphinx because she went back to a lifetime in the 1970s, believe it or not, where she was uncovering all this information with a different hypnotist. And when that other hypnotist was uncovering information with her, she learned all about the Sphinx and all about the Sphinx being built. So she saw it being built before there were any, humans on Earth at that time. And what had happened was there was this, like, they were searching for a place that would be good for this structure. And they found this structure basically because it was created from this asteroid or something that came from outer space and embedded itself in a rock. And that was able to harness and magnify energy. So it could act as a massive storage device, a massive hard drive, and it holds the history of humanity in the Sphinx. Also, there's other structures like this all throughout the world, but they have kind of eroded a little bit. But the Sphinx is still there. And what's really fascinating that we were learning is that other planets also have these type of structures. A lot of my clients will remember going to this one planet that has these spire type devices on it. And as soon as they get close to the planet, they usually start crying. It's massive, the amount of emotion that most people feel when they get close to this planet. They consider it their home planet and they miss it so much. It's in a lot of people's DNA, in their blood, to miss this planet. And there's like this, the spire communicates to our Sphinx and vice versa. Mm-hmm. So whatever is happening on our planet is being broadcast to a bunch of other planets that also have these Sphinx-like structures. So it's all set up so we can kind of keep tabs on one another and know, how close we are to our ascension. Are we doing okay? Because everything that affects Earth affects the whole universe, since we are everything, basically.
I'm sorry that I guess making fun of the reptilians before coming on, they didn't like that. So they terminated my connection for like 20 minutes. And I know I missed a good section of it, but I have some interesting questions because this idea of, right, people are reaching out to you, they are experiencing other lifetimes. Would that mean that there is actually less people on Earth than we think? Because if once you pass on to that next lifetime after you end this one and you inhibit another one or you take over another one, how does that work? Do you understand what I'm trying to get at? Is like, is there a limited amount of souls that is like a pool of souls?
Yeah, it seems like there are a limited amount of souls, that this is like the golden ticket. Everybody wants to be here for this experience because what is happening on Earth is new, because Earth is sort of new in its development, believe it or not. So Earth beings are considered like children, and we're about to go through this massive awakening, basically, is what countless clients will say. So these people don't contact me on the phone. They're my clients that come, that don't know one another, who go under hypnosis and then all say the same things, basically.
Interesting. And I've heard Earth referred to as a stepping stone. And why is it? Because you're saying that they miss this planet, it's their home planet, they're drawn to it, there's some sort of magnetism that pulls them in. Why is it that, or why do you think that all these ancient civilizations, a lot of which talk about the body and Earth being a prison? And I mean, look at Western philosophy and the religion here, where they're preparing for the afterlife. They want to transcend, right. And they talk about, the Gnostics talked about this being a prison for the soul, or it's like a hollow shell. Why do you think that is?
I've heard that, but to be honest, I've never heard that in the sessions. Quite the opposite, that there are so many souls that want to have an experience on Earth. And right now there's many star seeds from other planets that came here to volunteer. They wanted to come here. This is what a lot of beings consider the golden ticket, because there's been other little small pockets of groups like the people in Mount Shasta or like the Mayans, little small groups who have ascended already, but they're projecting a massive group ascending. And so to be here during this amazing time, according to them, is so exciting. Like it looks like it's terrible when you look, you know, on the news or something like that, but it's not what I hear at all in the sessions.
I vibe with that more personally because you know, granted there's all this other side mumbo jumbo going on. I really do feel that there is the true presence of the cosmic code here, and that it is a true blessing to be here. It's an absolute honor, you know, and the amount of gratitude that fills my bones on the daily when I step outside and see the trees could give me more than any money could ever fill my soul or satisfy me on that end. And there is a big mission. What that is, figuring it out. But I feel like, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no. Some people don't even have to do anything. Some people are from other planets, and they're like the type of people that had a really difficult childbirth because their vibration is different. So the mother either had a miscarry right before they were born, or their birth was just somewhat difficult, and they're super, super sensitive to violence, and they don't really quite get why everybody is the way they are on Earth. And those people, all they need to do is just be here. Like they're pulling in a frequency from a different plane that's so high that just by them, just you could do nothing, and you'd be fulfilling a huge mission by being here ultimately.
And the back to the idea of them wanting to extract us from this realm, I think that goes back to the inversion that we've seen all throughout history, where they, you know, up is really down and down is really up with these elites. And I wanted to ask you, have you ever come across, because I always like to talk about the governors, the archons, the reptilian overlords. Have you ever come across anything like that? Have people told you like there are these entities, because like Robert Monroe talks about, there are these entities who are harvesting our energy and trying to stop us. Have you run across any reptilian talk?
Well, what I've heard was that when they first started seeding our planet, they did so mostly in Antarctica, and they had these kind of factories set up and everything was going really smoothly. Antarctica looked a lot different. It looked, you know, beautiful and green. And what happened was something either arrived on the back of somebody's ship, or it came in when people were exiting from Mars, or it came in through an asteroid. No one really knows exactly where it came in. But whenever this thing came in, it brought the fear virus. So essentially, it was something that wasn't planned for this experiment. This experiment was supposed to be like a totally different type of experiment without the fear virus. But what happens when you have a planet with a is it just kind of changes the experiment, so to speak. There's more polarity. And basically on every planet they have a law, but this planet does have the law of duality, so you have to have good and bad or whatever. You have to abide by those laws when you come to this planet. But the problem is it attracts this kind of like vibration, so it attracts beings that feed off of fear. And essentially there's beings that, you know, or people that if they're more of what you would call a negative part of the negative polarity, then they get their energy from, you know, getting more negative energy. So they go about whatever way they can to like pull this negative energy or fear. Fear is one of the easiest ways to control the population. And when you get a whole population in fear, there's a lot of beings feeding off of the fear. It's almost like akin to like when a shark like is attracted to a fish that's creating a certain vibration in the water because it's injured and it's bloody, you know, it's similar. So, you know, if you're really fully in fear or feeling like a strong desire to do something hateful or mean, then you are essentially, you know, putting that vibration out there. And there's beings that would love to feed off of your vibration, but they can't assert themselves onto the earth. So the way they assert their control is through other people. They can do that through like different means of like mind control and stuff like that. I mean, there's so many
Yeah,
agendas.
they're the original puppet masters, and it makes me think about, I just lost the name, but the Gustave Le Bon. I don't know if you've ever read The Crowd. He's the father of crowd psychology, and it always seems that whenever I'm reading a scholarly type of work, somehow the metaphysical always is in a play whenever it comes to these works, or the occult. And in this book, he talks about the psychological process that a crowd goes through, and how it develops and it becomes its own living organism. But it starts off with what you're saying, with this metaphysical contagion, this parasite that takes over people in this environment, because I guess their aura is all blobbed up, and I just see it just like this black thing just, rolling over everybody, and because you see it in these videos as of, a couple of years ago, a year ago now, with the riots and this civil unrest where people were just not acting themselves. There were some sort of zombies. They were under a trance. And people always said, I mean, all the riots and all the wars that have gone out, it brings out this bestial nature in man. And it's how you're saying, it's this predatory essence, if you will, that shows itself up in these group environments. And a crowd could be a whole city or a whole entire civilization or an entire continent, because they meet certain criterias. But essentially a society is a crowd, and you see it spreading throughout the people, and it transforms them. It's really, really odd.
Wow. Yeah. It's amazing. There's just this war on consciousness that, the beings that feed off of the fear and everything don't want you to know just how powerful you are, because then you wouldn't be in fear anymore.
I wanted to get back to the Sphinx a little bit. I recently heard somebody else say that the Sphinx was actually a lynx, and it was a cat, a female cat. And the reason why it was a lynx was because it was a link to different places. And when you brought that up earlier, and I listened to one of your interviews, it's kind of seemed like that's kind of what you got too from Jen when she was doing her regressions, is that the Sphinx was a female and it was a lynx. Did she actually say it was a lynx? I just heard that she said it was a feminine cat.
She said it was a jungle cat, because these structures were built as if they were, they were the apex predator in the area. So in that place, they had these large jungle-like cats with like boxy type faces. And that was the face of the Sphinx, until symbolically it was taken down with like the whole pool of greed and masculine energy just taken down, and then a man's face was on it.
Before I cut out earlier, you were going on about these light beings building the Sphinx. And obviously there are numerous theories on the Sphinx. But I like the idea that, because I've also heard that they would use the Sphinx at sunrise to prophesize to people. They would ask it questions at sunrise. And it makes me think about the idea that the sun is a portal. And maybe how you're saying these light beings would come only at a certain time of the day. So as soon as the sun was coming up, this portal in the sky, and that they would use the Sphinx for divination purposes and ask it whatever, but it would only happen at sunrise. And then I know you brought up these light beings, so it makes me think like these light beings come out of the sun and build the Sphinx and then go back into it, and they would only show up at a certain time of day or something like that.
Well,
I found that
that's
really
interesting. I didn't find anything out about that, but it is interesting that you say the sun is a portal, because I've heard that so many times. Like just really quickly, I'll tell you, I had this client who really wanted to lose weight, and she came in and she tried everything, like all kinds of fad diets. It was obvious there was something going on. And her higher self, her subconscious said, she can't lose weight because she doesn't go outside without her contacts on. And I was like, what do you mean? That's just a surprising answer. Can't lose weight. And her subconscious said, yeah, it's, humans need to understand that the sun is a portal and that humans need unfiltered sunlight through their eyes, because what's happening, especially right now, is this sun is carrying information and codes, and it goes through the eyes to the pineal gland, and then it brings this information throughout the body. And that just by going in the sun a little bit and looking at the sun a little bit, like not staring at it, don't die, it can totally change your whole life. Because what happens is, what they were saying is that information is broadcast through the sun, since it is a portal. And so you can get this information in that way. And it doesn't have to be something you consciously know, but it's totally changing your DNA whenever you do something like this.
I've had a couple out of body experiences that led my soul to the collective outside of the geodesic barrier that is. And I don't know if it was in the general direction of the sun per se, because when I got up there, it wasn't bright. It was actually really dark. And the sun was nowhere near around, but everybody was these types of like light blue, milky blue kind of just energies. And we're all just butting each other, looking back down at the earth, like kind of just next to each other looking, and everybody's kind of waiting their turn. But the sun itself, I mean, I like to think that it could be a portal. I mean, you get that chance every day, and the second it pops right over the hills or the mountains, sets in this new day, this new time. It's a brand new existence, almost like the clock being completely reset, like a door being open, to jump through and to gather information of sorts. And yeah, that's a fascinating topic. What were the associations with the Sphinx and the uses of it to these people? What was their importance besides information? Like, I know it was like a battery mainly, kind of, right? Or like a computer software program where they could have and harness energy, but the pyramids were yet to even be thought of at this point, right?
Right. It was sort of like the internet, almost like a massive
Wi-Fi.
hard drive Wi-Fi that would store and broadcast information. But also things were hidden under the Sphinx. Some people remembered, there was technology down there, ships down there.
Wow.
They would have crystal grids down there. And when I was working with Jen, like I said, she didn't know anything about this stuff. She kept saying there's this being named 3. I don't know who this being is, but this being named 3 knows a lot about the Sphinx, and this being named 3 comes down and shares information. So later I learned that there's this being called I can't say it. Thrice Trismegistus. I can't say it.
Hermes Trismegistus. Yes,
or whatever, and was going by the name of 3. It was really wild to put these puzzle pieces together and to realize who she was talking about. Somebody who didn't even know any of this stuff, So it was wild. But yeah, they used the Sphinx for many different things. The Sphinx was originally the outpost of Atlantis. And the reason it was the outpost was because the founder could feel a difference in energy when he was first, creating his human hybrid slaves around the Sphinx. And that's right where Atlantis was set up. That was a very outpost of it, basically. And you know how we were talking about the Bermuda Triangle earlier? Well, I heard that was where the capital was. And and some of that technology is still down there. So what they were saying was that what happens to some people is that if things go haywire with that technology, then you can bump into a different dimension. You would be still alive, but you would go into a different dimension. It's funny how these shows are like interesting ways of disclosing information too.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And it builds off of theories, and it works like and makes new thought babies happen, and like
Yeah.
new things come to light. It's absolutely beautiful, tremendous. So the Sphinx is hollow, no doubt. There's tunnels underneath.
Yeah.
How far underneath? How hollow is Egypt? Because there's stories of tunnels going all the way to England that connect.
Oh, definitely.
Whoa.
Definitely. These tunnel systems are massive. And one of the reasons, I mean, there's so many reasons for the tunnel systems. One of the reasons was before the Ice Age, they created these tunnel systems. So they didn't want to lose their experiment, all these humans. So they created these massive tunnel systems. But I mean, those tunnel systems were used by extraterrestrials, by beings that clean up, the earth a little bit here and there, that change the timeline so we don't really remember or notice. And there's a lot of different convergent points within these tunnel systems where beings come together and like trade information, trade ideas. A lot of times there were big giants that would live within the tunnel systems. All different types of beings would use the tunnel systems, including humans.
And some sort of the mineral composites down there, right? Like that has to maybe play a role as to an importance for underneath the surface, because that's where we mine. We mine under the ground. That's where all of these beautiful things that we need to make conductive materials and to gather crystal energy is down there. So do you think there's a hub somewhere that's still being held, like the Shambhala type of aspect?
I think there's a bunch of them. I don't think there's just one. I think there's a bunch of convergent points where beings get together and they, trade information and ideas. And there's bunch of colonies under there. And also there's some reptilian groups that live in these cavernous type places within the earth. Definitely.
I want to bring up this really interesting, because I do believe that there are certain entities that have been in touch with humanity since the beginning of time. And these are the entities that the likes of John D. Albert Kelly, that they were talking to, they were peeking into other dimensions and talking to these entities, and they were receiving information back. And I believe that H.P. Lovecraft was in touch with one of these entities. He was a lover of little trinkets, little trinkets, and he would collect Oriental pottery. And we know that jinn are able to attach themselves. These, again, a contagion, the lower vibrational entities are able to attach themselves to inanimate objects. And the story goes that he was collecting this little Oriental pottery, and he got possessed by this jinn, right, Cthulhu, and the mythos was birthed from that, right? These entities can't do anything else, so they need that human medium to be able to come to manifestation. Now, there's an interesting story called "Imprisoned with the Pharaohs," and it goes by a few different names. "Imprisoned with the Pharaohs," "Under the Pyramids," also "Entombed with the Pharaohs," and it's a story that H.P. Lovecraft wrote for Harry Houdini. And the story goes that Harry Houdini, right, it's a fictional story, Harry Houdini was on vacation in Egypt, and he was abducted by his tour guide and taken underneath the Sphinx, to where he was taken and sacrificed, allegedly, to this octopus humanoid god thing under the Sphinx. But this is a story that Houdini's telling H.P. Lovecraft to write for him. And the guide's name was Abdul Rauz El Drogman, and this alter ego that H.P. Lovecraft had when he was a little boy was Abdul Al-Hazred. So it's kind of like the same thing. So they're in contact in their nightmares with this entity, right?
Wow.
And it's speaking to both of them. And I just find the resemblance to both names, like, but then he's talking about under the Sphinx, there was these underground civilization, and they were sacrificing people to this crazy looking god. So I don't know, again, this is fiction, but we're talking about people who use fiction as a medium to portray the occult, because they can't come out and say, hey, there's this thing under the Sphinx and we sacrifice people to it.
Right. And I like the little bit of fear they throw in just to get everybody really afraid. Yeah.
So I found it really weird that they talk about the Sphinx and it's fiction, but then we know that there are underground tunnels. The reason that you see I'm planning actually a trip to Egypt early next year with a friend of mine, and the reason that you see the pyramids and you don't see anything around them is because it's all underground tunnels, and if you were to build anything on it, they would literally crumble and fall into, because the foundation wouldn't be able to hold it. There's just too many caverns and catacombs and tunnels underneath. It's crazy.
It's like hollow under there. So much.
So the Nile flooding, right, happened quite consistently, and they would use it for their agricultural purposes, and they would do a lot of things with it. It'd probably be a pretty spiritual time when the floods would come in. It'd be everybody would come together and have to do these things, to prepare for the floods. And I'm wondering how the Sphinx played a part of this, maybe as an access point during the floods, because were the tunnels exposed at any point, or were they filling the tunnels with water underneath? It's so fascinating. I have no idea.
Well, I know the Sphinx was totally underwater because clients remember that. They remember it being totally underwater.
Wow.
But none of its power or anything was lost at all, because it was such advanced technology. It can basically withstand anything, because it's not the facade, it's not like the face. That's what's so powerful. It's like the rock that it's built into.
Structures like that all over the world probably are signifying something maybe underneath.
Yeah. Definitely. And they were saying that we'll be able to understand everything within the Sphinx and within these structures when we reach a certain level of consciousness. But we can't understand it right now. If you were to fully understand everything within the Sphinx, you'd be fully enlightened, fully awakened. And then you wouldn't have this, game. It wouldn't be a game or a lesson anymore. You'd already just go off a different planet.
Oh.
I find it interesting that I'm sorry, Dan. I find it interesting that secret societies like the Freemasons use the Sphinx outside of their temples to signify the guarding of knowledge. And it makes me think, what sort of knowledge would they be insinuating that is by this certain Sphinx? Because it's freaking massive. So imagine the vault of knowledge that's underneath there. How you're saying, if you were to unlock that key, you were talking about the flower of life being a mandala to be able to transport your consciousness. Well, we know that the Egyptians were using it. We know that they were sealing in their temples. They were putting the flower of life. So again, this is technology that we don't understand, and I find it fascinating that you're having people reach out to you who are literally having to tap into otherworldly technologies to be able to come up with this information. And I've always wondered how certain researchers are able to come up with the information they come up with, and it turns out that some researchers are actually tapping into otherworldly entities to acquire what I call ultra-terrestrial knowledge, which is knowledge outside the fabric of space and time, that you're able to tap into it, but it's the Faustian pact. How much are you willing to give up?
It's also inside space and time as well as being outside. It's also here, baby.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't research anything. I don't go about trying to find specific information because it just comes all to me. I don't even know who these other people are. I don't research any of it. It's just all comes through my clients deep under hypnosis.
Wow.
It's wild because they have an agenda. That's what they say. They say, we want this information out, so we're going to share it with you. And the information has its own consciousness. It shouldn't sit. It shouldn't be stagnant. It needs to be shared, and the people that need it will come across it.
And Sarah, you were recently at the Sphinx yourself. Did you feel any type of energy when you were there, or did you have any type of I don't know that you're clairvoyant or anything, but do you have any of those abilities or anything like that, intuition or anything?
I could definitely feel the energy there, but it was before I knew any of this stuff because it was in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going back there this May with a group of people. So I'm really excited now that I know a lot more about it.
Nice.
So I want to take the group and like do since I'm going with another hypnotist, we're going to hypnotize everybody, find out what their memories are too.
Okay, just a couple things, just for fun, This is for you, for anybody going out there. Bring Geiger counters, okay? Just a quick little simple Geiger counter. Read the electromagnetic radiation going on. Maybe bring some magnets with you.
That's a great idea.
I'm trying to live vicariously through y'all. I don't know when I'm going to get out there. But I'm super curious. The potency is insane. It's insane. But I wanted just to tap on the cave, the whole cave thing, and the Masons and the Sphinx. Masons love caves. Okay, I've been finding them everywhere. I'm digging into the Mason caves. The early Mason lodges were caves in America, and they actually have them all over the country. And people can just look up a Mason cave in your state, and I guarantee you will find a subterranean meeting space for these Masons. And they claim it. It's actually, there's lodge numbers for the caves. So we're living on top of labyrinths underneath the ground.
Yeah, we are. It's interesting too, because when people remember setting up the ley lines, they already mapped everything out. Basically the cedars of the planet. They knew exactly where based on what the projected Earth changes would be. They knew where populations would thrive the best. And so they set the ley lines to set up there because they knew that humans would be attracted somewhat to these ley lines. So humans just find themselves close to them.
I subscribe to the idea
like a moth to a flame.
Yeah, it is.
Straight up.
I'm obsessed with Pythagoras, and one of the things that Pythagoras said is all is number. And I believe if all is number, then it hints at binary code, and if it hints at binary code, I believe it's some sort of simulation of some sort. So there has to be an architect, there has to be some sort of programmer, and I believe what these individuals of back then were trying to do was essentially create what CERN has done, where they're creating these mega computers and these mega portals, but they were using elemental technology. They were using the actual world as a frequency, as a conductor, because that's why if you look at any ancient complex, it looks like a circuit board. It's the wildest thing. And if you look at the whole black aether thing with I've talked to Jared Murphy, where it's not aliens, it's worse, it's us, but he talks about the soil is conductive. The actual soil itself is conductive, and these people were able to tap into this grid from one side of the world to another, and the same soil, the same composites, what the soil is made of, it's found in different parts of the world where these megalithic structures exist. So they understood how Nikola Tesla knew about this, and there's a reason why I call them the lizard people, but people like J.P. Morgan or Westinghouse or all these other lizard-esque people, or Rockefeller, or who, I'm sure there's other ones, even Flagler from Florida, Henry Flagler. He was in bed with all those people. And when Tesla was like, hey, I'm going to build this tower modeled after the pyramids, to do what? Well, to get free energy. Free what? Free? No. There's nothing free here, bro. Let's shut you down. Let's go ahead and give everything to what Thomas Edison is going to be our boy. There he is. That's your man. And the rest is history. Because they were like, no, we can't let people know that they're able to tap into this tech. We need to hoard it for ourselves, and we need to monetize it and make money from this, because it's out there. It's like the spring water here in Florida, they charge us for it. It comes out of the ground, out of a hole in the ground, and they charge us money for it. And these companies are taking millions and millions of gallons per day. It's like the world gives it to you, bro, for free.
What have clients said to you about this specific energy grid? What has come up in readings about that? And is that a part of the agenda, is to get everybody aware of this free energy that we can tap into? And if so, any blueprints?
it seems like it's definitely coming, because clients will remember, like, when they were or are extraterrestrial, they go over places like rifts in the mountain or like volcanoes, because this free energy is like spewing everywhere out of the earth, and they already know how to tap into it, and they're able to power their ship with that basically forever. But when I was getting the information about the Sphinx, I a couple times what my session was stopped because they said, you're getting too close to the confidential information about the free energy that's coming to the planet, and it's too dangerous to let any of that information out right now. They were like, we'll just we'll allow your client to see something else and then we'll bring her back. And it was funny because I would get really close, like, to finding out about this energy. I guess it comes from some other planet as well. They use it on some other planet. And they would always stop the session and be like, nope, you're getting too close. We can't let that information out, because they were really monitoring everything that was coming out.
I have a question. Did these well, so, okay, and correct me if I'm wrong. So you're using, these people are reaching out to you, and they're essentially, are they a medium, or are they they're talking from themselves as another entity, or do these entities have names? Did they ever give you a
great
name?
Question. No, they would be clients that would come in for a session who wanted to, like, heal something, like their shoulder, or maybe they're having relationship problems, just really unsuspecting people coming in for a session. But what I do is Dolores Cannon's method of deep hypnosis. So you basically find out everything about yourself. You can find out, your purpose, and you could even heal your body. But people come in for stuff like that, like maybe they want to know their purpose in this life. And as part of the session, I regress the client, and they go through like a past life, and then we access their higher self, and then we ask all their questions. And some of the sessions that I use from my book, I use like different subjects that I work with all the time. So it was free. So I could ask personal questions, about this information. But a lot of times it would still come through, clients that were just there for, healing something. And then information would come through from beings that would consider themselves a higher consciousness. So it would be like universal consciousness, because they said they had an agenda. I started noticing this happening when I was first working with my first client, Jen, because the higher consciousness came through her and said, this information is so important for humanity. We're going to share it with you, but we want you to share it with the world. And we'll just, help you with this. So I was like, all right, whatever. People say all kinds of things. But then this strange phenomenon started happening where all these people that didn't know one another started coming in for sessions talking about the same things. And I still thought it was coincidence. Like, I really just was like, what? And then I finally got it through my head. Okay, I have to, uncover this information and share it.
Wow. How'd you feel and I don't know, again, I was gone for a little bit, so I don't know if you guys talked to us, but how did you feel the first time that you were just working on this person, the very first time, and then they just start going off on something? You're just like trying to, do you massage them at all? Or do you're massage, what?
Keep going.
The answers of the universe? Absolutely. So how did you feel the very first time?
I mean, I was just so used to hearing all kinds of stuff that I was just like, whatever, I thought it was another day at the office, and they're like, yeah, this is so important. We're going to send you all kinds of information. It's like, whatever, And then when the phenomenon started happening, then I slowly started to understand. But all this stuff started when I moved my location. I was living in a different house. And literally, as soon as I got to this house, the number is 1212. It's on some special, I don't know, line, might be a ley line or something. Everything started happening once I moved here. But I know now that I planned all that. Like, I planned to come here, I planned to work with Jen, because in her life review, she knew she was coming in to meet me. and that we were going to work together to get this information. I have such a thick head. Like, I'm such a skeptic too, that I was just like, whatever, it takes me a lot to believe it.
You must have had some hypnotic work on yourself that got you intrigued or interested in this. And I believe you've gone over that in our first episode, but can you experience, or can you tell us about your experience on the other side?
When I like I said, I just like last to believe anything, I had to prove it to myself. So as part of the QHHT classes, people would practice on me because I'm also an instructor. So I was going around with Dolores Cannon's daughter, teaching it all over the world. And when we were teaching in Miami, as part of the class, they would practice on me, so they would put me under, which is easy for me now to do, basically to go under, but I can't guide myself. So when I went under,
out, dude.
The student was guiding me, and I learned a lot more about Atlantis. I learned about like when I lived in Atlantis and I was a judge. And so that's when I learned more about like what was going on with the different illnesses that they had on Atlantis and my role there. I knew different things after that about Atlantis. So it helped me piece together the puzzles, basically. And I understood like how the circles were. I understood the inner ring because I lived in the inner ring, and it took me like 3.5 hours to walk around the inner ring in Atlantis. And I had these really cool sandals that like would mold to my feet, and it totally pressed on every pressure point, and I was almost like floating on air. And I went to all these cool parties, really neat buildings, it was really interesting. But I was like this old like man. And I was, just kind
have
of
a toga.
No, I didn't. I had like special, like it looked like linen, kind of like
You have a
some
staff
type of
by any
soft
chance?
fabric.
What staff? Did you have like a really cool staff?
No, I didn't have any of that. I was like a regular person.
I have.
Can you kind of explain hypnosis and like how, because you said you can fall into it really easy. How does one fall into hypnosis? Could you possibly fall into hypnosis alone or by yourself in any type of way?
It's really easy. Like the trick to doing that, if you wanted to do it by yourself, is just for like a week, every time you wake up in the morning and you still have access to your dream, just kind of remember that state. That's the deep theta state. So when you kind of start to really feel that state, so like say tomorrow morning you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm in the state. Like try to remember like how the state feels, like what you're doing in that state. And then you can bring about that state on your own, basically.
So can I tell you guys about a dream I had last night?
Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on.
All right.
So
it's really good.
So, because the reason why I'm asking that is because do you think that people that are having alien abductions or these different types of hallucinations are maybe putting themselves into a theta state, and that's why they're able to have these visions? Because some of the abduction stories happen in their bed with their spouse next to them, and they never actually leave. So that means it's something that's happening within their own cognitive consciousness or whatever.
That's what I thought. I used to think that when people would be contacted by aliens, just a part of them left, or they were under hypnosis or something like that. But from the countless abduction stories, it's like the same thing. Like the being or whoever it is, like usually shines a light on you, and that's the first thing you see, or you hear some noise and you know that they're around, and then they freeze you. Basically, you're frozen. You can't even look to the side or up and down. Every part of you is frozen, and then they carry you to wherever the ship is, and they carry all of you. And then you go aboard the ship and maybe they're doing upgrades or checking your body for some issues, and then they put you back, hopefully put you back in the bed. Some people, they don't put back in the bed. They put like next to their house or whatever, but usually it's them, abducting them, checking on them, or it's like family members, a lot of times there's people as part of different programs because their extraterrestrial version needs their own help. So essentially they're coming back and asking themselves for help in a different realm. And sometimes you're creating the seeds for yourself later. Like I was having these clients that were coming in and they were like postmenopausal women, like older women, and they all claimed to feel pregnant. So they would go to their doctor and the doctor's like, no, that's impossible. You already went through menopause. Like, why do you feel pregnant? And they would finally find their way to me, and sure enough, each time they would go under hypnosis, the subconscious will say, well, yeah, they are constantly pregnant because it's easier to hide. And they're seeding this other planet because we always have to have a backup planet. So there's other planets that we're seeding right now. And, they're using a lot of women that are, don't know what's wrong with them, basically.
So these alien beings are somewhat us in a parallel universe or in future, or we're somehow related to them and they're coming back to help us in this life. Is that
even reptilians, even them? Believe it or not, there's like people incarnated that remember being a reptilian, because you might think that things are black and white, like good and bad, but it's not. It all feeds in together because this is a simulation. It's like a 3D video game.
Yes.
Right. It's not really real. It's like, it is created. There's a designer. It's like when you see a sunset, it's not exactly completely real, but it feels very real when you're here because you're totally playing a role. But, oh my God, I totally forgot what you asked me.
If the alien or other entities are like our other selves of different dimensions or alien. It's
what's
like
up with the fractal?
Our self in the future or something like that, and they're coming back.
Yeah, if you look at an alien,
or like Avatar more so, maybe they're like we're like under hypnosis in this life, and then we're like coming to help ourselves.
Yeah,
it's hard. It's a hard one to explain, really.
Well, if you just look at an alien, a humanoid-looking alien. I mean, they have these big eyes because they've been in space for millennia. The gravity is different, so they're elongated. They're human. They're just, a lot of them are us in the future because the time doesn't exist, and people know time doesn't exist. So if time doesn't exist and everything that's happening in the now is happening, then it would make sense. There's future versions of us. But it's kind of like the Mandela effect, where you can be right next to somebody that remembers Mandela dying in prison versus somebody that doesn't. There's different paths that you could take. There's some future versions of us that are definitely Arcturian that would tell you they're the future of us. But there's gray beings that will say, oh, we're the future of, depending on what path, what path you take. And there's a lot of work being done to help us be on the right path. It seems like it's inevitable, though, to be honest. It just seems like we already really won. We're just playing this, video game out.
Something tells me you're working on a book about the moon. Is that true? You got a moon book coming out? I
would love to have a moon book out. If you're totally picking up on it, then maybe that's what's coming, because I would love it. I mean, the moon gets mentioned a lot, it is interesting how it's hollow, and there's different beings there's humans that are on the moon, different secret space programs, where they take people and they're used for like remote viewing and all different kinds of things that are going on right now.
Is it a conductor? And have you heard, or what's your opinions on the moon being put there and created to terraform Earth?
Oh, have to ask that question. I don't know.
Sweet.
I'll have to ask that.
All right, get back to us about that one.
Okay.
It sounds really interesting because it's such an anomaly. And, ancient Egypt, which we were talking about, and the Sphinx, they all have their correlations to the sun, but also at the same time, the moon plays the exact same role because it's the exact same as the sun. It's just on the other side. The moon and the sun and their paternal and beautiful relationship together and effect on everything on this planet is incredible. And so I'm just trying to ask more moon questions, like what is really going on,
Maybe this will lead me to asking, and then we'll find out so many new things.
Yes.
I have a couple things. So you're in Florida, right? You mentioned that you're in Florida. I'm in Florida too. And there's something about the energy here that will literally drive you insane, hence Florida man. Yeah. And I've also heard that Florida is best for manifestation because of the water around it. And there's this interesting figure, John Saxer in the Saxer saga. He talks about Florida being Atlantis or being the original Garden of Eden and all this stuff. Have you ran across any of that? Because I know you said it was in the Atlantic, but does Florida play a role at all in this whole Atlantis Garden of Eden thing?
Definitely. Wherever the energy of Atlantis can still be felt, it can create a certain type of energy. And Florida is one of those places. It's in the water. All you have to do is go in the water and you can pick up on the Atlantean energy there. I mean, it didn't go anywhere. It's still there.
Interesting.
But as far as the Garden of Eden, a lot of my clients, when they describe the early Atlantis, they describe it like a Garden of Eden. Like they used to have actual mermaids that were real, like and people still remember being a mermaid, and they literally seem to live miles deep within the ocean in these caves, and they're still around. They travel in pods and communicate with echolocation and things like that still, but they're not like the Little Mermaid.
I living on an island for years, talking to people who are, born and raised all across small islands in the oceans. Just island people that are native to islands are they're the best. They're absolutely amazing, beautiful people. Anyways, ask them if they believe in mermaids, and it's such a deep memory and in that culture, and it's such a deep, actual, like, serious topic and belief to a lot of people. And so the mermaid exploration is so cool. It's so sick. What about
trades with the humans?
I think that we're related. I heard that listen to this lady talk about the Arcturians, who I love the Arcturians. I think they're really great, sweet, awesome gnosis beings that are trying to do some good. I would hope so. But she was saying that dolphins are related to us in a sense, that the dolphins almost were us at one point, or like they had the same type of we're from the same planet or same star, but they broke off and kept to be dolphins, and then we came and been humans. Is there any lore to that?
That's so interesting. I'll have to ask that question. I do know that, like, on other on water planets, like Sirius, the Sirius star, one of the Sirius planets in the star system, it's like a water planet, and you can still find dolphins or mer people or like these big manta rays there now today, and everyone lives underwater. But I also heard that dolphins, through their frequency, can help raise the vibration. But I really don't know if they were supposed to be human or not. I know that when the Cedars came, they wanted to make this a really great experiment. So they put, being humanoid beings in water, and that created like the mer people. But it just didn't work out as well as the humans with legs on Earth. That design just didn't seem to work as well, and the giant design didn't really work as well, because they had giants too that were supposed to do different tasks and do different things according to my clients, and that didn't work out either. But there still are giants just living within the Earth, apparently.
Hey Juan, I heard on one of
What
your
about,
episodes
what is-
recently that you were talking about dolphin birth, and that can you explain that a little bit? I don't know all the details of it, but I heard you read about it.
So the idea came up by listening to, I forgot who I was listening to, but it had to do something about how in water, at home births, that in water does something to the plasma or something in the energy field, that baby, it's allegedly been proven that they have higher IQs, and they're smarter because they're born in water. They're in water in the womb the entire time, so it would make sense that they keep that same balance instead of extracting the baby. And that is a very traumatic experience that a baby goes through, literally being yanked out of your home, right? They remember that forever.
Brutal.
So it's a trauma that a newborn goes through. And apparently in Hawaii there are dolphin assisted births where the dolphin, again, it's this whole thing where they go in with the dolphin and the dolphin just knows, because the dolphin has literally 2 human brains essentially on each side of its brain. Its brain is giant. And one brain controls one entire side of the body, and the vice versa. And essentially, when a dolphin sleeps, it shuts one brain down, and one of his eyes is open, and he's operational while one side rests, and then it switches out. So essentially, dolphins are aliens, and there is these people you can look it up, in Hawaii, who do dolphin births because they say that it helps these children develop. And I don't know if it gives them supernatural abilities or what it may be, but it's a real thing that I did not know about. But yeah, it started with that at home births in the water helps, something about the transition, and those babies have higher IQs. And then it went into the whole dolphins being used for assisted births, which I found really fascinating. It's kind of dangerous if you really think about it, because dolphins are rapists. Dolphins are really mean.
Yeah.
No, they're not mean. Their dolphins are not really mean. First of all, I've swam with so many pods. They are very sweet, but they are sensual. So
They
They're really
are.
sexual. Yeah, they're really
Yeah,
sexual.
they're always having sex because I live right on the water, and anytime we're like coming by, with the kids, I'm like, what are the dolphin doing right now? they're like all red, they're like making a big ruckus. Like
Oh, man,
they party.
Having orgies outside of your house.
Yeah, they do.
Wow, it's disturbing. I can't scrub that visual out of my mind. But yeah, that was a thing that I didn't know about. But it is real. You can look it up and do a deeper research into it. But it is a real thing.
yeah, I believe
That's
it. I believe it, man.
What more can you tell us about like the Sphinx and like the pyramids too? When they talk, when Jen talks about the Sphinx, does she bring up the pyramids at all also? And like
A little bit, but they've used that shape. They've used like that design for many different planets. Like other clients remember being on other planets where they had the same design. They had pyramid shapes when they powered their crystals through Atlantis. But essentially, the pyramids were set up like the internet. Basically, they would go, information would go through the ley lines into the pyramids, and you can still totally revitalize yourself in these pyramids. Like just setting the intention. I mean, it's missing the capstone. It would be so much more powerful if it had that, but you can still use those pyramids. You feel a difference when you go inside the pyramid, when you come out. Definitely.
I've had a friend of mine tell me the exact same thing, that they're working at like 2% or 0.05% of its original capacity, but that when you go into it, I think that the pyramids were used as some sort of squirt gun, if you will, for the soul. I think that they were used to transcend. And I think that is what, it's not funny, Roman, it's a real thing, a squirt gun. That's the only way I could, machine gun, whatever, a gun for the soul in order to shoot it up into the ether, the aether, the upper eons, whatever you want to call it. And I think this is why
it's a cannon.
Yeah, it's a cannon. That's why a lot of civilizations vanished. Oh, what happened to
Right.
They just descended, dude.
the Hyksos? Took them over. Well, who are the Hyksos? Well, they were a nomadic people. So you're gonna tell me a nomadic tribe came out of nowhere and took over one of the greatest civilizations of all time? I'm not buying it. So I think that's what they
Yeah.
were used for.
Yeah, yeah, and for initiation processes and stuff too, because when people would go down in the tunnels, it was interesting because the tunnels from the Sphinx go from the widening to these like narrow tunnels, and it was meant to create something in your mind, like to go from the widening of your mind down to a narrow focus. It's like everything in Egypt is so symbolic. It's like meant to remind you. It's like it's just like a video game where you go and it's like here are a lot of clues if you go to Egypt.
Yeah, we recently had Jeffrey Drum on the show, and he was talking about how the pyramids were used to produce chemicals. Has anybody ever said anything to that effect?
No, what kind of chemicals? So interesting.
Yeah, well, lots of different things. Ammonia,
Wow.
gold.
Yeah, he said that basically the setup was to do all like a bunch of experiments. It was one of the major like science hubs of those ancient cultures, and that the pyramids themselves had functions that worked on a massive scale to make a lot of chemicals at one time in order to function society, to make even making compost and soil and things like that as well. But also creating gold is definitely one of the large functions that we've talked about the pyramid plenty of times on the show, and we've come to I have come to a general conclusion for the most part to say that they were a ulterior gold making machine, and energy frequency picker uppers, absolutely cannons for sure. I think multifunctional, but definitely creating gold in the tunnels underneath, at least in South America. I'm big mercurial batteries.
That would make so much sense.
Right?
Because what?
Go ahead.
Oh no, because you can find like mercury in the underneath the pyramid. So that's interesting. Yeah, pools of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So I have a question. You were talking about, Egypt having all of these massive symbolic things, and everything is almost symbolic of something else on a higher initiatory level. So has it ever come up in your workings, ulterior tools like the crook and the flail from Osiris? Is that symbolic, or were there things that your clients have held in the past, amulets, things that had special relics that legitimately wielded power and energy? Was that a part of the golden age at all, or Atlantean times, to have devices like that could yes?
I think basically anything, but part of the golden age is really for us to awaken to the truth of ourselves. I think like how powerful we really, really are, because that information is really suppressed. Like we don't really need crystals. We don't really need anything. Like the truth about humans is that they're extremely powerful, but because we've been told for so long and brainwashed that we're just like a shell of what we really could be. And I think that information is coming back. It's like you hear it all the time, like you're so powerful, but you don't really understand what that really means. Like it's really true. People can do anything that they want. I had one client who remembered like being an extraterrestrial that was like seeding different planets, and they were saying, yeah, they wanted him to understand the blueprint of a human, because humans don't really understand their blueprint. They don't understand that they can manifest through their emotions, because emotions act as the gateway through the universe. And that's one of the reasons why humans are so powerful, because they can manifest anything basically through their emotions. But it's like stuff like that we don't know, that I think will start to make a comeback. We'll start to understand like who we really are.
Yes, that's it. That we're so powerful.
And
let's go outside and jump into a river.
To talk about the pyramids and how you were mentioning these tunnels, it goes back to the cave symbolism, where it's the womb of the earth, and as it shrinks in, going in towards the monad, that oneness. It's the same thing of the birth canal, right? Where you were
Yeah.
in this space and then it opens up and you come out to this new rebirth or new life. I mean, whatever it is. But back to this alchemical transformational process, where allegedly where alchemy was originated from was from Egypt. You know, that was the motherland of of alchemy. So it would make sense that they would use these pyramids for some sort of alchemical process, either spiritually or physically, right? Or they were being reborn themselves in this initiation or whatever. I mean, because you see these ducts going up and down, and there's water at the very bottom of the or maybe they were doing some sort of baptism or something there. Who knows, right?
Oh, I know.
Definitely
A
baths.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to go pretty soon because my son has soccer practice.
Nice.
All right.
Well, I think we've hit multiple awesome, great topic points, and so my soul is satisfied. Absolutely, it was a pleasant.
Which one,
time.
bro?
Thank you.
Yeah, which one?
At least 3 out of 4. One has been away for a little bit. I don't know when he's coming back.
This is great. I had a lot of fun. Thank you for inviting me. So.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
problem.
thank you too. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, of course, Sarah. You're always welcome back anytime. We love to have you here. Super. We're just hitting you with questions because we find it so amazing that you have some of these like hidden answers that other people don't have, you know, from these regressions that you have done. And so it's just very fascinating information to be able to, you know,
Yes.
pull it from that type of modality. Whereas, you know, a lot of people are looking back through history and trying to figure these things out. And it seems like you're just getting, you know, when you're talking to Jen or your other clients, you're getting these downloads from them and revealing a big part of the picture that, you know, we spend hours of time trying to figure out for ourselves.
It feels pure too. It like has this purity to it that is beautiful. It just feels good and it makes intuitive sense. Honestly, like it's very easy to. I'm like, oh, it's the best. It's the best. So you just had the book come out a few months ago on the Sphinx.
Like January.
January, yeah.
So, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and plug your stuff and tell people where they can find you at. Any type of things that you want people to go find, and the books that you have, and let them know what's going on with Sarah Breskman Cosme.
Thanks. I have 2 books now on Amazon: A Hypnotist's Journey to Atlantis and A Hypnotist's Journey to the Secrets of the Sphinx. And you can get it on Audible, Kindle, you know, paperback right now. The Sphinx book is almost out on Audible.
Oh, is it going to be on Audible soon? Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I'm going to talk about a lot about all this new information that's been coming through at Laughlin, Nevada at the UFO conference. I'm going to show some actual footage of people really under hypnosis and what it looks like when these extraterrestrials come through.
What's the dates on that that convention?
November 11th through the 13th.
That's that's a powerful time.
Yeah, I know.
So much shit in history has happened on that weekend.
Wow.
So
I'm sure it's going to be, it's always fun. It's just fun, you know, to speak like same language as other people and like meet like-minded people. And then I'm going to be speaking at the Conscious Life Expo in LA, February 10th through the 13th.
Ooh.
And I'm going to be talking more about like the Sphinx and then showing some client sessions of that too, and talking about a lot more. And then I'm also going to show people how to do self-hypnosis and how to tap into the quantum field themselves, and then, you know, do things like heal themselves and find information. Because I mean, everybody's like a book.
We can go to we can go to your website and find out the information about these conferences.
Yeah, you can go to my website, theholistichuhypnotist.com, and you find out where I am next and what I'm doing.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. It's always fun talking
It was
to
a
you guys.
blast. Such a blast. It's gonna be fun editing, putting music to it. So many good things to pull at for this one. And yeah, until next time, maybe we'll see you at a convention. Who knows? Nevada
That'd
and
be
LA are both
awesome.
very close. So
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Especially
Well, the
from your
Conscious
room.
Life Expo in February is like one of the coolest expos I've ever been to. Yes, last year was my first time, and there's so many people from all over the place. Which is pretty cool.
yeah.
We should go to one of these.
Is it early February or late February?
It's February 10th through the 13th.
Okay, cool. Interesting.
But you'll find out more on my website. It hasn't been.
Yes.
Tickets aren't on sale yet for the Conscious Life Expo.
All
It was
right.
a pleasure meeting you, Sarah. Thank you.
It was really nice meeting you too, Juan. My husband's named Juan. He's from Puerto Rico. Where are you from?
Puerto Rico.
What part?
Bayamon, Puerto Rico. So
That's where my husband's from.
are we the same person? Am I your husband?
You know any of the Cosmes?
Cosme's? No, I don't.
Okay.
I'm an Ayala, so
Ayala? Oh, I'll ask Juan.
yeah.
Ayala. It'd be funny if you guys are related.
Juan's
That would be
podcast
pretty
is
great.
called Juan on One. So maybe if your
Yeah,
husband
Yeah.
wants to join him, they
Well,
can
he
have
knows
the
about
Juan
fishing.
and
That's
Juan
it.
podcast.
Fishing.
And I fish too.
Spear fishing.
I'm
He
wearing
can tell you all about like how to fix a boat.
a
But
peacock bash fishing shirt right now, so
cool.
Nice.
Anytime you want Juan to talk about fishing, he could come on. But that's
awesome. Well, it was a pleasure meeting you. That was a weird synchronicity there.
I know, right? From Bayamon too. From Bayamon, like
Yeah.
it's so funny. Oh my gosh.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome.
Ayalas, the
Trip out,
Ayalas.
dude. Trip out.
Well,
Had a great time.
thanks everybody for showing up.
Nice meeting you
and,
guys.
Love you, bud.
Thank you, Fire Tribe. And if you're not down with that, wake up.